Hello, welcome to my Genie Bottle. Welcome to a layout share and a little essay reading that goes with the layout, which I'm using to substitute for journaling because it explains everything. I'm going to have a little seat. I'm going to read you this essay that I wrote years ago in college called My Horse Story. All right, you ready? Here we go. I was 10 years old when I abandoned Barbie dolls to pursue my new passion, horses. I wholeheartedly embraced the fever and almost got killed. At the onset of my obsession, I began taking equestrian classes at Grenadier Farm, where I was in heaven, luxuriating in all things horses, training, and competition. I adored being around these magnificent creatures as much as I loved being on their backs. I loved watching them scoop up mounds of grain with their soft, nimble lips, and the scents and sounds of them chewing their favorite meal with their adorable horse teeth. I loved hearing the sound of their hooves at any gait and on any surface. I loved sailing over fences and going Mach 2 with my hair flying in the wind behind me. I loved placing my cheek against the warm expanse of theirs, the smell of their coat, and leaning my whole weight against them as I hugged their massive necks. I loved running my hands over their powerful bodies, cupping their velvety whiskered chins, massaging their sensitive ears, and placing kisses on the end of their nose. I loved English riding, the sleek black boots, crisp white shirts, and smart-fitted blazers, preferring it a mile over Western style. I loved the low profile and simplicity of the English saddle, and the shine of the silver stirrups that I'd stand up in repeatedly until I had trained my heels to sink low and to stay where they belonged. I drank in every detail of every moment I spent at Grenadier Farm. Mrs. Wiseman was owner of the stables and also my instructor. She commanded tremendous respect wherever she went, with her gruff voice, bold manner, and focused intensity. I admired the expertise that she'd gained during her lifetime of riding, and I was eager to learn from her. She was authority personified in every way, with her intellect, facility with horses, and equestrian skills always on display. Her tan, weathered skin and short gray hair that flared around her face in constant disarray, like a storm cloud, emphasized this fact. Her whole being was a storm, and I was quick to obey each and every order she barked at me from the center of the arena, where she sat on her stool like a drill sergeant, arms locked across her chest, and scowling at me as she scrutinized the minutest details of my riding. She was a force, and I was her obedient student, most eager to not screw up. Between my fear of making mistakes and my fear of her, I rode at a high level of caution. But nonetheless, I savored all of my minutes astride. Riding came naturally to me, and I quickly progressed from the beginner push-button horses to the more advanced horses who would be good for developing my riding skills. At the beginning of each class, a group of us young girls, all caught in the grip of horse fever, would gather around Mrs. Wiseman as she sat on the two-step entrance of the tack room, assigning a horse for each of us to ride for that day's lesson. I still remember the unease I felt when it was my turn and she would pin me with her dark eyes and say, "Ride him, he'll be good for you." What that really meant was, this horse lost his mind years ago. He's stubborn and irascible, and it will be fun to see how long you stay on him. One day I was especially uptight about getting on a thoroughbred named Ensign Trouble, aka, and more to the point, Trouble. When I expressed my concern about managing this animal to Mrs. Wiseman, she dismissed my fears with a shrug and said, "Just make sure she knows you're the boss." The problem was I knew who the boss really was, and I wasn't going to press the issue. Because my teacher intimidated me more than the horse at that point, I rode Trouble. Of course, that day, our class did not ride within the reassuring confines of the fenced-in arena where we usually did. Oh, no. We mixed it up and headed into the wild, open field, which was bordered, in the loosest sense of the word, by trees way off in the distance, leaving the field exposed and occupied by the enemy. Giant jumps, which plotted to annihilate us with their ridiculous heights. This field is further away from Trouble's stall than the arena where we usually rode, and she strongly preferred to either be in her stall or as close to it as possible, so she took a special issue with this venue change. She tossed her head in defiance, danced side to side, and jerked at the reins as I nudged her forward through the gate. Anxiety charged both of us and I detected the formation of her scheme a millisecond before its execution. Suddenly, she whipped around, spinning in an instant to face the gate, now closed, which we had just gotten through. Surrendering to the inevitable, I got into jumping position just in time to soar with her over the 4.5-foot obstruction to her wishes, and held on for dear life as we galloped all the way back to the barn. I'm pretty sure I heard Mrs. Wiseman yelling after us, "What are you doing?" All I can say is that whoever named that horse was one perceptive human. Trouble was troubled, and her newest antics had ended that day's lesson. Why hadn't I stopped her, one may ask? Well, because I wasn't about to involve myself in a battle I knew I could not win. As a consequence of my dismal performance and my woeful inadequacies, Mrs. Wiseman informed me that I would be riding Trouble on the next mock hunt. A mock hunt is a fast-paced trail ride that accelerates down steep hills, around sharp turns, and through congested areas of trees. It is a frenzied chase after an imaginary fox, ideal for horses like Trouble, who are allowed free rein with their lunacy. The day of the hunt was sunny and warm, the perfect contrast to the fear and foreboding I felt. Mrs. Wiseman rode at the head of our group, and we lambs followed her in single file through the field. The very same field that mere weeks before Trouble and I had rapidly exited, sailing like greased lightning over that useless, insipid fence, with me hanging on for dear life. That field, that fence, that horse. Oh, goody! I took in deep, steadying breaths as I somewhat relaxed into the saddle, and we strolled along at a comforting, sluggish walk. But the woods loomed ahead, waiting to envelop our riding party with its menacing terrain of rocky slopes and pitching earth. Trees thickly lined the twisting trails, ready to pluck a body from its mount, and the streams lay in anticipation of baptizing the first victims of the hunt. When the riders reached the woods, they began an easy canter, while those of us in the back lunged involuntarily into a full gallop. When Trouble and I burst through the trees, we broke the rules of riding and the laws of science by passing other riders on a path already too narrow for one horse. It wasn't my fault because this horse was lost in her psychosis and there was nothing I could do. So I yelled, "Sorry, heads up, excuse us," as we passed everyone, and I bent low over her neck to avoid being beheaded. When we descended the hill and arrived at the creek, instead of picking her way gently through its shallow depths, like the other horses, Trouble jumped over it, bank to bank, and tore wildly up the opposite hill, where Mrs. Wiseman waited for the rest of us, astonished and watching us in amazement as Trouble and I barreled towards her. The moment we reached her, Trouble came to a screeching halt right at the tail of Mrs. Wiseman's horse, which was where she had decided she wanted to be at the moment, instead of left behind with the back of the pack. Taking full advantage of this arrested motion, I slid off Trouble and seized the reins. I made apologies to Mrs. Wiseman and let her know that was a wrap for me. The hunt was over. I led that crazy horse back through the forest, the field, the parking lot, and down the road to deposit her where she belonged, locked up in her stall. I never did ride on another mock hunt because riding skills wouldn't do me any good if I were not alive to use them. Through my competition years, I did take on other advanced horses, though none so deranged as Trouble, and somehow survived them too. On one particularly animated cross-country ride, my horse and I headed toward the In-N-Out, a tricky jump which was completely fenced in on all four sides, designed so that horse and rider would jump in, take one stride, then jump out. 2 fences in a row, and no way out but over. My horse, with her own special style, jumped in and came to an abrupt stop, leaving us trapped inside the square of the fence. Semi-stunned, I sat back down into my saddle and had just begun to brainstorm solutions to get out when suddenly my horse launched over the second fence from a standstill at point-blank range. I have no idea how I remained mounted, but I know that I got some impressive airtime during the ordeal. I don't know for sure, but I can just imagine that Mrs. Wiseman rolled her eyes and shook her head, having dismissed me as utterly beyond hope. One time, a horse I rode, named Seafoam, Foamy for short, took me on a caper during a midnight trail ride when she spontaneously barrel raced around a giant tree as I continued in my previous direction, landing in a pack of bushes 20 feet from my point of takeoff that saved my life. Through it all, I had many close calls and racked up my fair share of sores and bruises, but I never got a broken bone, and it is with great mystification and gratitude that I consider that fact. Dangerous as this sport is, I relished all my years of riding, and I'm happy that I was able to spend so much time with those supreme beasts, to share this passion with other horse lovers, to get such thorough training, and to ride in the illustrious horse competitions. I loved it all. I loved the thrill. I loved the excitement. I loved the joy that flooded me when I'd win those huge ribbons with the layered ruffles, with the streaming satin in bright colors, and the gold lettering which stated my place in the competition. I especially loved the trophies with the horse standing glorious at the top. I loved adding them to my shelves, and I loved thumbtacking the ribbons around my ceiling as I balanced on my chair. However, despite all the pleasure I experienced riding, I had too much innate caution to advance to the highest levels of show jumping that I wanted to reach. So I hung up my competition gear and settled for casual rides whenever the mood struck. But it wasn't all for naught. My competition years taught me 2 things which made it all worthwhile. I discovered I was someone who preferred to be in control, and I developed a great appreciation for the blessing called life. And that is my horse story. Added a little staple, all secure, ready to tuck into my layout, which I will now share with you. Sweep this off scene. Love that Vicki Boutin paper. Can't wait to use it for that picture, which I plan to use to create and put behind this layout. So we have, something just fell off that layout, by the way. Let me see if I can get this all in frame here. I'm pretty sure a letter whipped off this layout. Let me look. Let's tuck it back a little to about here. Looks pretty centered, I suppose. You can see it nonetheless. What just fell? Something just fell. One of these green letters off. We shall see. Okay, so it's titled My Horse Story. And then over here it says, "You were awesome," referring to Mrs. Wiseman. This is Mrs. Wiseman. Obviously this is, and this is. Okay, this is me when I was little, I don't know, 10, 11, whatever. Loving on a horse in a paddock over a fence. That was Sandspur. We all love that horse. Pretty docile, although if you ever touched his neck when you were jumping, he'd buck you off or try to buck you off. It was always a delight. But pretty much he was tame. Although, actually, he did bite other horses. You had to hang back from other horses' butts because he'd bite them in the butt. And then the other horse would kick you. And then there was a row and your life was in danger, you know. So maybe he wasn't so, so docile, actually, after all. Okay, let me explain stuff. Oh, I didn't finish. This is Trouble. Hello, Trouble. That's me on Trouble in 1986. When I was about 18. That, my friends, that is Trouble. Bad, bad girl. She's a bad, bad girl. She looks very much like Sanspur, by the way. But if you'll note, Sanspur has white down to the kind of near the tip of his nose, and Trouble's ends her white about mid-face where the bridle hits. Anyway, okay, Sanspur, me, Trouble, Mrs. Wiseman, center of arena, horses, going around the border. This right here is a group of riders in Mrs. Wiseman's arena on her horses during a show. I'm not in that group. Found this pic online, loved it, the perspective of it, and so I printed it, added it to the layout. And this is one of the main stables, and Mrs. Wiseman is in this photo on that two-step entrance, which I didn't know at first, but was delighted to see after I'd printed it. This also wasn't my picture. Someone else had taken it, and I downloaded it, downloaded it from the net and printed it. And knew it immediately, of course, to be the stable. I spent many an hour in here, but found on closer inspection that Mrs. Wiseman's actually sitting there where I described in my essay that I wrote in 1995-ish. That was so cool. Anyway, this picture I got off the internet, and this for that matter. And this is right outside this barn. And she's sitting on one of the blocks that we would use to climb up on extra big horses. Mrs. Wiseman actually in pink, can't believe it. This right here's a little like 2-stall shed where we would cross tie our horses to get them prepped for shows. So we'd wash them and suds them up and pull their manes and braid their tails. Super fun. Many a time I'd be in here getting my horse prepped for the show, and suds would be leaking down this dirt. This is a sloped area, and as we washed our horses, this I printed of Mrs. Wiseman. I don't know what horse this is. Not sure. Could be Trouble. Not sure. And I cut this and stuck it in here and popped it up on this end and tucked it down against the paper on this end. I like the effect of the slope sort of deal. Let me show you the paper I used. This paper pack. I've got 3 of them that I got a few years back, some years ago, to make my triplet granddaughter's first year of life scrapbooks, of which there were 11. I love these paper pads, and I used this for the typewriter paper, and this, and the polka dot, and the red square letter boxes, which are obscured pretty much there. I'll show you. It's this. Love this paper. I did gut this, so I have 2 gutted pieces that I can use. What is this? Oh, this is my horse later. That's my first horse, Shiloh. But that's for later layout. But I did save these pieces because I love the paper. And I used a lot of Chamel's collection. This paper was in there. Also this, I might as well scoop it up and put it back in that paper pad while I'm at it. I used a lot of Chamel's collection, and it's similar to a thicker pack that has chipboard stickers. So let me explain. These are chipboard letters that I used for my horse and were. Okay? The word awesome is from Chamel's phrase sticker pack. And the words, let me get out of here. This is an unused one of these. This is from Chamel's My Story phrase sticker pack. This is here. Loved how it went around there. I mean, that was a moment where I probably trilled. I probably went, ah, like that. Story was from here. And this is from here, and all the rest. Most of the gold's from here. And the other stars, I have stars from this pack. And what else? I have some Maggie Holmes stuff going on. All the horse ribbons are Maggie Holmes. Get this out of the way. I have 2 of these, and I'm going to order more because I have many horse pictures to scrap. So this is Maggie Holmes horse sticker set, and I'm working my way through 2 of them. I will order more. I love it that much. This comes in there. Yeah, it's awesome. Let's see, what else do I have on this page? I have cutouts from Chamelle's Main Character Energy, I think, on here somewhere. Maybe these are from Main Character Energy. And I have, and this sticker is from a sticker pack from Chamelle. And this button, wooden button, is from Chamelle, Main Character Energy. Some of these enamel dots are from Chamelle. I'm not sure. Sparkle City, I think. What else do we have? Let's see. Oh, I gotta show you this. I can unearth it. I saw some typos in here that I'm gonna reprint that sucker, even though it's my second printing. This maybe was my happiest thing that came together. Serendipity was at play. Check it. This from Chamelle, Main Character Energy. I used one of these. Do you know what I used? Do you know where it is? Do you spot it? Do you? Do you spot the most amazing pairing of sticker to photo you ever saw? Ever yet? Mrs. Wiseman, The Storm, Who Is a Force. Do you see? Do you see? I was dying. I was dying. Oh yeah, that was one of my happier moments in the Genie Ball for sure. Oh Lord, I loved it. Okay, anything else that I used or want to mention? Let me look. This horseshoes from also the Maggie Holmes. So let's do this. Maggie Holmes pack. Chamelle. Also Chamelle. And then Maggie Holmes. And then this, I think, is Recollections. Pretty sure. And I think that's a wrap. That's pretty quick, huh? That didn't take too long, huh? All right, I intend to add more. I want to scrap more about my horses and horse history. Madly in love with this. I love pink and orange in this whole color thing and 70s look. And I want to pair it with that picture, as I said. I will put it behind in the book, this layout. And I had to scrap my first horse and lots more to do horse-wise. Gonna order more Maggie Holmes stickers. You can't get enough of those. Anyway, I hope you had fun here with me today. I hope you're inspired in some way or you played along with me. And I hope to be back soon with another video. Bye-bye.